with you for another episode of on our February program in honor of Black History Month. We had a great panel discussion and she was so good. We had to have her back. So everybody welcome Wenora Johnson. And let me remind you, she is a three-time, if once isn't tough enough, a three-time cancer survivor. So for all of you out there who have had a diagnosis of cancer or a loved one has, and you have been challenged with talking to your family members about cancer, forward them this episode, get them to watch it, because Wenora is an expert not only on cancer, but she's the mother of two beautiful daughters, four grandchildren. She's had to have a lot of these tough conversations, as you can imagine. Again, one time you think would be enough talking about cancer, three times. She's also a great cancer advocate, a former Navy veteran, and does a lot to promote awareness through policy and change. And I can't thank you enough, Wenora, for being back with us.
I can't thank you enough for allowing me to be here again, Brenda. Your platform has been so wonderful in getting the message out, especially for those who are in underprivileged areas. And so
Yeah,
I'm hoping this message really resonates with people and get them talking. So
I
again,
do.
thank you.
You are most welcome. So let's remind everybody your three types of cancer, and then that led to an underlying genetic condition. So set the stage for everybody. So as a reminder.
Absolutely. So my story kind of begins in 2011. Matter of fact, it's almost 10 years to the date, but it began with what I thought was a healthy visit to my doctor and turned out to go from having a fit test to a colonoscopy to waking up from surgery and being told that I have a late stage colorectal cancer. And that not only did I have it, but I'd had it for about 15 years and that now you need to be treated for it. So I was shocked by that diagnosis, but uh, being a fighter that we are, especially, as a mother and as a grandmother, I decided that we'd go through this treatment. And it was 4 years after treatment that I was told by my oncologist that maybe I should have a genetic test. And I kind of fought it for a little bit and finally decided to have that genetic test. And the genetic test revealed that I had a 60 to 80% chance of getting endometrial cancer.
Ay,
So
ay, ay.
this again is where I felt that, okay, the ball's in my court. I can do something about it. And I had a complete hysterectomy. But upon the biopsy itself, it said that I had already had stage 1 endometrial cancer. So, yes, I dodged a bullet that time. But it really made me started thinking about this genetic component that I now have and how I need to take it a lot more serious. And it
Mm.
was in 2017 that I found this really small pimple on my lower back that turned out to be basal cell carcinoma. And it was 2 inches that was carved out of my back by
Ay,
my dermatologist. So, needless to say, I take it very serious now. And the reason that we're on here talking today, because as a mother and as a grandmother, I want to be able to talk to my children and grandchildren about cancer and not giving them the fear that they see on TV or from others and misinformation out there.
I think that's great. So the underlying genetic condition was Lynch syndrome. We'll talk about talking to your kids, but is this the reason for the cancers, or is this been passed on to any of your daughters or grandchildren? Do you know?
Well, you're correct. It is, I was diagnosed as being Lynch syndrome. And the thing about it is I have a 50% chance of passing this down to my children, my girls. And the hardest part about that is getting them to understand the importance of this diagnose and the
Mm-hmm.
importance of getting genetic testing. I'm really close to getting them genetically tested. I, I would love to push them as hard as I can, but I have to step back sometimes as a mom and realize that at the end of the day, it's their ultimate decision.
Yeah.
And what I can do is become a really good example for them to follow and hope that they don't wait too long to get tested and to stay on top of this. this
Yeah.
cancer or mutation that we have in our family.
Yeah, that must be intense. So let's take a step back. What would be for people out there that are, diagnosed or recently diagnosed? And, I've heard a couple schools of thought. One, like only give age appropriate information, or, don't alarm people and tell them the whole story. Like, what's your approach? What's your recommendation for talking to, let's tackle adult children first?
When it comes to my adult children, you might as well just be as honest as you completely can. I mean, holding back nothing helps the situation. And if I can give you a brief example, for me, it
Please.
wasn't until I was diagnosed with my colorectal cancer that my aunt told me, oh, by the way, your grandfather passed away from colorectal cancer at the age of 38. And it just blew me away because I thought, that would have been a perfect opportunity if they had talked to me about it, even as an adult, that this was something that could possibly be in our family that I could have been a lot more proactive with. So
Yeah.
I'm giving my children, my adult children, the tools necessary to be proactive if such a diagnosis is given to them.
hmm What do you feel about, because I think with cancer, we always think, okay, fear of dying. I hope I'm not the one that does die of this type of cancer, but sadly, statistically, that is a reality. How do you address death and dying with your adult children? And any recommendations for, getting like sort of your house in order, or I guess things to think about, but not so it's so morbid, like how do you strike that balance between being informative, but not having it be so dark and overwhelming?
That's a really, really good question, Brenda. And I look at it as tackling it from a couple of different avenues. That number one, you being the person that's diagnosed, you have to get an understanding of yourself. You have to be in a good place to be able to even talk about it with your adult children, let alone trying to wrap it around your own head that I've been diagnosed with something that I may not survive from.
Mhm.
So for me, I had to step back and take that moment of gathering that in my head. And you're right, putting my affairs in order. Are there things that I need to make sure that no one has to worry about, like life insurance, funeral costs, things of that nature? So it took a moment for me to wrap that around my head. And then you have to sit down and have that serious talk about, the possibility of that happening if I don't survive. And I had that kind of talk with my children. I told them, I said, look, because I was one of those that actually stopped my treatment. I did not go for the entire 6 months of my recommended treatment for colorectal cancer. But at the end of the day, I was okay with that. I had made peace with myself
Mhm.
and the fact that what life I did have left, I wanted it to be a quality of life. And I wanted to spend that quality of life that was left with them.
hmm And what is the prognosis? 10 years, you're 10 years out from a colorectal diagnosis, and particularly since you didn't finish the full course of treatment, what is kind of transpired in this last bit of time?
Well, during that 10-year period, I took the time to really educate myself. And that's how I became this passionate patient advocate. And one of those things you do as an advocate is you attend a lot of conferences. So, one of the conferences that gave me the best feeling of that, I had done something maybe right for me in my life by shortening the span of my chemotherapy treatment from 6 months to 3 months, is that ASCO came out with information that said that individuals who suffered from late stage colorectal cancer benefited just as well from 3 months of chemotherapy as 6 months. And I was like, oh my God, I'm on the right path here.
Right.
So for me, just keeping myself equipped by going to conferences and staying in touch with other advocates and talking really, really helped me through this emotional time that, maybe some others just don't get.
Yeah. How do you, so obviously my diagnosis is not of cancer, it's of multiple sclerosis, but I know early on, It was all we talked about, all we focused on, all we thought about. I had a young daughter at the time. Now she has a daughter, but it was all consuming, I think, because everything's so new, and I was trying to give her the right information because she was so young. She was only 5, not to scare her, but understand what's happening to me. And as we are farther and farther out from that diagnosis, like 27, 28 years now, we don't talk about it or think about it every day. But I imagine, that there's probably times that you still do need to address it. So what have you found in talking to your girls about how it's changed from diagnosis to now, and how have those conversations happened, and what do they look like?
Well, that's interesting because I think you and I, both of our children have had the best opportunity available out to them because we are patient advocates, because we are trying to get the word out and the voice out. I almost don't even think about anymore really talking to them, because I'm hoping that when I'm sharing with them the articles that I'm coming across, or articles that I'm featured in, or podcasts that I'm initiating in, that something will trigger there and keep it in their mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're both doing awesome jobs in that matter. But for some individuals who can't, it really has to come to a terms of aligning yourself maybe with an organization that can provide you with the tools to get to that point, because it's not easy for everyone. It's not easy to talk about. And in fact, I call them kind of like silent secrets. There's silent secrets in some households, especially for, minority households. We
Mm-hmm.
just don't talk about it because, number one, I guess we're the fear of it. We don't want that person to die. The fear of talking about it thinks that the person is going to die. So we just don't talk about it. But we really do need to talk about it, because our future for our grandchildren depend on it. They need to know what's in their genetic makeup.
Yeah, that's true. So how old are your grandchildren now? I think between 2 and 21, right?
Correct.
That's a great span. You're lucky. You have 4. I just have 1.
Wait, you just wait. The good times are just now starting.
Yeah.
But you know what? One of the things, and I was a grandmother at a fairly young age. In fact, I was 37 years old when my 16-year-old daughter became a mother herself. Mm-hmm. And yet, while it bothered me, I wanted to be the full supporting mother that I could to her, and stepping back and letting her still take on her role as a parent. And mm-hmm. So I always encourage them, no, I'm grandma. I'm not sure, I always, encourage my grandchildren to call me grandma, because that's how I saw myself. I am your grandmother who's here to, to be the helper of your mom. And so we made those distinctions, and it was a little bit of tough love there too, because I wanted them to realize that, I'll take care and help with the grandchildren, but it was only because you were doing things for your life that bettered your life, not to go out and hang out,
Have you talked to the older kids about cancer and about the hope that you want them to do screenings, proper colorectal screenings, get the genetic testing? How do your daughters take you telling their kids?
Absolutely. You know what? They're very open to it, even though I have a tough time with them myself. They're very open to it. In fact, it's interesting. My 14-year-old grandson, we were having a conversation in the car, but it was because there was an article that was coming out in our local paper about colorectal cancer awareness month, which was last month in March. And we just had a simple discussion about it, and he had a few simple questions, and that was the extent of it. Sometimes they don't need a lot of information because it's just not warranted, or the situation doesn't make it feasible at that time.
Mm-hmm. So the little ones, like, I guess, what would you say, I think about my situation when my grandmother was going to pass, who should be there, who should know, or when the diagnosis became more grave, like, how do you think it's important to, like, sort of support kids when they see somebody getting worse, I guess?
Well, I guess for me, they need to be taught about death, whether it's expected or unexpected, and to give them that opportunity as young children to grieve or to ask questions, because that's the only way they learn. They Kids aren't stupid. They pick up and see things that are going around. So with us being honest with them and open, it just makes for them to be better, well-rounded adults. No one, I can remember, thinking that, well, no one hid anything from me as I was growing up, or things like that. That's what I want my grandchildren to feel, that when I'm talking to even the almost 2-year-old one, plenty of kisses, or and encouraging small words of that, sometimes grandma doesn't feel well.
Yeah.
And, while they may not quite understand that, but just enough to get that as they get older, then you can give them more information to make them more comfortable with something as even as important as death.
Yeah, and I think they're much more resilient than you think. And it's that balance, right? So I don't think you should ever have a fear-based approach of like, this could happen, because you don't know. So I've always tried to be like, what's the information they need now that's relevant, so that impacts them with, like you said, the truth of the moment instead of the fear of the future.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's so needed now, and it can be refreshing when you don't have children who are angry, grow up angry, uh, because someone hid information from them, or no one told them the truth until you're like my age, being diagnosed with a late stage cancer. Oh, by the way, your grandfather passed away. Well, I would have liked to have
Yeah,
known
exactly.
that.
And you could have been doing screening and testing ahead of time. I know we touched on this in honor of Black History Month. I want, no matter anybody out there today that has cancer, this is relevant information. But I do know specifically some of the incidence of cancer in the African American community is much higher. And I know that, again, this just genetic piece was really an important one for you. So can you, before we close today, tell people how they can get a genetic test? I think you've highlighted the importance, but the importance, how to get a genetic test, what that process looks like, so that, if there's anybody out there watching this and need the genetic testing, they can find out how to access it.
Absolutely. First of all, I just want to say there are some organizations out there that can help you with, trying to get a genetic test, or at least help you with the steps to following to get a genetic test. But my primary way for individuals who want to get genetically tested is for them to talk to their primary care physician. Talk to that primary care physician, tell them about your concerns and that you would like to be genetically tested, and to help you obtain that information to do so, because they're going to provide you with that information if they can, or if not, at least direct you in the right place to go, and then have your insurance pay for it, because it's not cheap, and it's vital to your life, your children's lives, and your future grandchildren that you may have.
That's right. And for those that may not have insurance or coverage, do you know of any organizations, especially if you're getting genetically tested after a diagnosis of one cancer? Are there any that will help support this? Any nonprofits that you know of that do help support?
There are probably a few out there. I can't think off the top of my head to provide them for you today, but what I can do is that for those who are interested, I will send you links to their information, so that if you feel that this is something that's important for you and your family, please reach out to these groups and get tested. It's vital. It's imperative that you know where you stand.
Well, I think it speaks volumes. You're sitting here with 3 cancers, 10 years after diagnosis, and really 25 years after, that's probably the first time you had, cancerous cells in your body. So you're a real testimony to longevity, positive attitude, being your own advocate, and getting the information that you need and passing it along the food chain to so many others in the community. So we'll try to put some of those links below in the Facebook page of cancer organizations that Wenora knows. And Wenora, I want to thank you again for being with us today.
Well, thank you again, because what you've allowed me to do as a patient advocate is to be the voice for the unheard. I'm going to equip patients to make their own healthcare choices without fear. And not only just patients, but survivors and caregivers. They're important in this message too. And then just helping communities of colors receive the best healthcare so that our life expectancy isn't diminished. It's important.
I agree. It is important. And remember, everybody, speak up, demand what is best for you. I can tell you, I've been at this for a long time. And my dad used to say to me, nobody, and I always thought when he first told me it, I was young, I thought, well, that's then, come on and chat with me. We would love to hear from you. So if you are interested in sharing your story and getting involved, please visit our website. It's snow-companies.com, and you can opt in there to learn more. And you will see in the link my producer will put up in the comment sections our website and how you can reach out to us, and hopefully we can have a chat soon. So Miss Wenora, I have a feeling I'll be seeing you again.
Thank you again, Brenda.
You're great. I wish you continued good health and good conversations with your loved ones. And thank you for your bravery and your courage. We really appreciate it.
Thanks again. And it was a pleasure to be here.
You're welcome. I love you. Mwah.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.